I freaking called it. Yep, I called it Bubsy 3D on this list. I'm not really all that surprised, considering Bubsy 3D is one of those games that typically tends to make on a lot of worst games of all time lists. Yeah. Some of you may have heard of it, but yeah, it is really that bad. And given that it's like, okay, so 25 minus 18, that's like somewhere, it's definitely close to the top 5 for him. The only other games that often tend to make a lot of worse lists that I can imagine being in the top 5 are games like Superman 64, Drake of the 99 Dragons, and Ride to Hell Retribution, which, I'll be honest, I've not played any of those games, but they're one of those kinds of games that are so legendary in their awfulness that you can pretty much smell the turd from miles away. And this is definitely one of them. I don't really have too much else to say. And by the way, he has definitely reviewed this game under the Caddicarus banner, so if you're definitely curious to see him rip this one apart, jokes and all, then definitely go ahead and check it out. I highly recommend that. So, without further ado, let's get it on! Caddicarus presents Badvent Calendar. What could possibly go wrong?
Any Bubsy game could have made it on the list of my worst games I've ever played. Bubsy Jaguar, Bubsy 2 on Game Boy, even the Woolies Strike Back for how much it costed and how little there actually was to the game. But
yeah,
hey, at least
pretty
Woolies
much.
Strike Back controlled alright, which is not what I can say about Bubsy 3D on the PS1. Cheesy came close and I even considered Rascal, but I'm sorry, you cannot beat this. This is the granddaddy of terrible games.
Of terrible 3D platformers, especially.
Game ever, not just platforms. And the tone is set magnificently from the very beginning. Take this FMV sequence out of context and you think it was from a horror game. And do you hear the noises emanating from it?
Bubsy Bobcat!
Bubsy Bobcat! Sit down!
And that is the key word in this game. It's probably the most annoying game ever made from a number of factors. Let's gather around the fire and list them, shall we? Looks, well, firstly,
let's gather around the fire.
3D designer's art project. No textures, blinding colours, jagged and ugly shapes jutting out all over the place. No theming and some of the worst character models you'll ever see. Sounds, well, not only do you get music that sounds like a choir of kids that ate too many beans.
Yeah, he made that joke in his review.
But also have to cope with listening to Bubsy himself, yelling, ranting and squealing about every single thing you can imagine in the most grating voice when you hit an enemy, when you get hit
and
by
in
an
the
enemy,
awful
when you
pilot
collect a
cartoon,
jump
he was
by the
voiced
end
by
and
Rob
interrupt
Paulson.
your eardrum with a toothpick.
Probably the worst choice of his career, if I
Easily
do say so
the most annoying
myself.
aspect of Bubsy 3D above everything else is how it actually plays. Gameplay is as basic as you can imagine. Run from point A to point B without dying and fight a boss after a while. Nothing special there. But when your eyes and ears are being illegally assaulted while you simply cannot control where you are moving, you're going to want to stop playing immediately.
Yeah, I think my eyes are getting dry and painfully.
Overhead bits, but Bubsy 3D sticks with tank controls from the start to the end, and unlike Resident Evil or even Croc, the game is not built around them whatsoever. It wants you to constantly react to things quickly.
And Croc isn't even that great of a game to begin with, at least in my opinion.
On its face. And speaking of, you'll want to avoid jumping as much as possible since the camera swoops upwards and back down behind you at sickening speeds every single time you jump. So you're left a lot.
Yeah, imagine trying to play Super Mario 64 or Spyro with that kind of thing.
You turn so slowly yet slip around and pick up forward speed like a stick of butter with a jet engine, and it makes something as simple as grabbing basic collectibles close to impossible. If it weren't for these arrows in the levels, I wouldn't even know where I was going since everything looks totally identical and so bloody bad.
I said stop. Sorry. And that should really be a pretty much a clear sign that even the developers didn't know what they were doing with their level design. When you have to put air, and don't get me wrong, Super Mario 64 did this sometimes, but at least it had good, tight controls, especially for the time, to make up for it. But when you have to occasionally put arrows to give your players direction, that's kind of bad. And I think I can hear my dad out there. If he comes in here, I apologize, but back to the video.
Oh, aren't these game designers wonderful?
No,
they're not.
Better? Most of the world consider this the worst game ever made, but I've still got another 7 days to go. It gets even worse than this. Help me.
Yeah. I cannot imagine that many games being worse than Bubsy 3D. Okay, aside from the ones that I have mentioned, and even then, that's debatable. Well, except for maybe Ride Hell Retribution, but that's because that's not only legendarily awful, but it's also excessively offensive. Like, look at any worst games of 2013 list. Bless me. Look at any 2013 worst games of the year list and watch some of the reviews like from The Completionist and Pro Jared, and you will know just how disgustingly offensive that game is. Like, I'm not even kidding. I guess it's a good thing that, especially unlike that of movies, that I don't really go that far out of my way to play that many games. And don't get me wrong, I love games. I love games, but I don't really go that far out of my... I'm basically like a reverse Pro Jared, where he doesn't really go so far out of his way to see that many movies that are coming out. It's kind of the same thing with me. Now, granted, I don't see too many movies either, but that's only because I don't really have all the time in the world for that. If I had more of the time and sometimes even money, I would definitely be seeing almost every movie that ever comes out in a single year. At least the good ones, because I'm not really as much of a movie critic. It's not something I really would make a career out of, even though I do reviews sometimes, but it's definitely something that I would consider just for fun of it. But on the Pro, that basically means I can look up any critical and audience reaction to something, take it into consideration, and whether or not I'll go see it, with the only rare exception in the audience category being The Last Jedi, because yes, I love that movie. Bite me. So, not really too much else to say, so that's about all the time we got. If you liked the video, go ahead and comment, like, and or subscribe, and the other suggestions, leave some in the comment section below. And as always, I'm King Gargantuas, and I'll see you all next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to me if you want to see more videos like this. Follow me on Twitter at King Gargantuas if you want to know what I'm up to. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you all next time.